Hi, everyone. I'm Mark from Being Reasonable, and I appreciate you joining us. And we're reviewing one of my videos today, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves. We'll go around the clock here. And first, we have Diamond from Diamond Discourse. How you doing, Diamond?
I'm doing good. Yeah, glad to be here.
You just you loaded some interesting videos a few weeks ago when you were up in
Yeah.
DC, so definitely check those out.
Yeah, Supreme Court. I'm still new to this stuff, so I'm hoping to see a progress of better and better SE as I go along. So maybe after I have a few years like y'all.
Yeah,
That's great. I'd love to see more SE outside of federal buildings, and that's like the federal of federal buildings. Wow, it's really cool. And I'm Reid from Cordial Curiosity. Good to be back. Been on a bit of a review show and call-in show hiatus. Been busy with Peter Goshen's reverse Q&A tour, but I'm now done with that, so I can be back to editing videos and doing these stuff. So,
yay!
Happy to be back.
Good to have you.
I've been away for a while. I'm back now.
Great. It's good to have you. We missed you. And so this is Being Reasonable, Being Reasonable YouTube video where on this video, I just took my monopod. I have a GoPro 360, and I took it on a walk around town, and I just happened to run into this nice person, and I said, could I ask you, basically ask you questions about a belief, and kind of told her what I usually tell people. And she said that was fine. I just planted the monopod down and just started having a chat, which is kind of cool with that kind of tech. Basically all you need is a camera on a stand, and you're ready to go.
So you're just walking around like a shepherd, basically, with this thing standing here.
Well, basically, it gets compact, and then when they say yes, I just I expand it and pop out the bottom.
Nice.
So, yeah, so it's how it works. So, and I just happened to find this person, and it all worked out well. And she was really just a super interlocutor, very contemplative, very insightful. And it's always great to talk to people who really consider what you're saying and what their belief is. So I think she was just a joy to have, and it just also shows you a way you can have these kind of conversations.
Oh, cool. Let's get into the video.
Do you have an important belief you wish to discuss?
Yeah, reincarnation.
Okay, and that sounds great. And by reincarnation, what do we mean by that?
I believe that there's a essence to an individual and an animal that is more than their body, that after their body dies, that essence, or soul if you want, takes on another form or another lifetime and keeps going, is a part of an evolution towards merging with God. Okay,
so after we die, then the essence of us, and we can talk about that further, goes on, and we come back as another person?
Yes, once you become a human, I believe that's the level of consciousness that keeps going until you evolve into oneness with God.
And over time we'll evolve with oneness with God.
Yeah, and it takes hundreds, maybe thousands of lifetimes.
Okay, interesting. All right, on a scale from 1 to 7, how confident are you that your belief is true?
7.
And on a scale from 1 to 7, how important is it for you to believe in true things that are true and real?
How important is it? 6 or 7. Yeah.
It's pretty important.
Yeah.
How do you know your belief is true?
Well, I have certain experiences that led me to believe that I had known people before or been at places before than this lifetime. And also, just from the reading that I've done, I'm more interested in, I guess you could call it Asian philosophy, or, Indian philosophy. And according to many of the teachers from the readings that I've done, it makes more sense to me that there'd be more than one lifetime. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that we just have one shot at life. That just seems ridiculous.
So I think you mentioned three things. You mentioned personal experience.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you've had some experiences that showed you this is true. You've read things that have showed you this is true. And to you, it just makes intrinsic sense that this is true.
Yeah.
Of those three things, what of those three ways of knowing what you know would you say is the primary way you know what you know?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the primary thing would be the experience and then reading about things that reinforce my understanding of those experiences.
Now, did you have a specific experience that led you to this belief? Or is it a series of...
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what experience, if you don't mind me asking, led you to believe that this is true?
Well, a couple of times, more than a couple of times, I have met people in my life, and I had this strong, strong sense that I've known them before. It was almost like, oh, there she is, or oh, there he is, like unexplained connection. And they turned out to be very important people in my life. You know, I would call it a karmic link, that we had some sort of karma together.
Okay.
That, and then a couple of times I've had actual visions of being somewhere in the past, and it didn't make any sense that it had anything to do with the current day.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Let's say Tammy is sitting next to you, and Tammy hasn't had that experience where she has known people before that she hasn't met before.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say, for whatever reason, Tammy doesn't believe the belief, and she hasn't had those visions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a third party, and I am hearing you and Tammy discuss your belief versus her belief, which seems like the opposite of your belief. How would myself, as a third person, know what's objectively true or real hearing you and Tammy discuss? Is there a way I could find out?
Well, I think it comes down to what is real. You know, what is reality? Is it subjective or objective? And is there a way to measure it? And when it comes to something like this, it's tricky. I mean, I don't think you can measure it. I don't think Tammy, not having had these experiences, would understand, or maybe she could contemplate, perhaps, but I don't think there's a way to say something is real when it's a belief that you can't prove, you can't be scientific about it.
Okay, and you said an interesting thing there. I'd like to clarify. Are you saying that reality, is it a more of a subjective thing, or is a reality more an objective thing in your mind?
I think it's pretty subjective.
Okay. So if you have a belief that reincarnation exists, and Tammy standing next to you has a belief pretty much the opposite, that reincarnation doesn't exist, then both are equally true.
That's one way of putting it. I mean, again, it kind of comes down to how to define the word truth, how to define what's real. I mean, my experience doesn't negate her experience, or does her experience negate mine?
Yeah.
Because they're separate.
Sure. So I guess my question would be...
Let me ask you, Mark, what tipped you off to go down the subjective versus objective route?
She mentioned something about her truth, didn't she? She said something. She mentioned the word truth. We have to back it up a second, but in a way that made me question how she saw that word. I can't remember exactly what she said, but
you just clarified that if someone has experience demonstrating A and someone has experience demonstrating not A, they can both be true. That's a good clarification. And it says yes, then that's a good clarification. That
right.
She's not talking about.
I see.
All of the reasons that she's given so far are subjective. So yeah, totally right down that line. She didn't give anything that was externally experienceable.
Gotcha.
She talked about like logic, or I wrote down like a reason, the third reason that she said, which was the least supported. She said it didn't seem like it made sense, which maybe I shouldn't quite say that's logic necessarily, but it seemed irrational almost.
Yeah, you can take that two ways. It's like, it seems like it just wouldn't make sense if it wasn't true, and you could take that to mean a logic sense or an intuitive sense.
Right. Yeah. But I was glad to see the way you picked out and said, okay, well, out of these three, which is the more important one? That was great. Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of what makes sense means in terms of psychosocial motivations, or make sense of abstract ideas and values, or just unknown phenomenon, or spiritual experiences. Lots of examples. All right.
Yeah.
That we can both experience things, and do our experience of certain things, does that change whether that thing is true or not in the world, the way we experience it?
Well, we have to interpret our experiences, and that's part of what the brain is trying to do all the time, is to make sense or make meaning of what it experiences.
Sure. And maybe this will help. There's a car over there.
The magic of the GoPro.
Let's say you experience that there's a car there, and for whatever reason, I'm not experiencing that car there.
There
you think that reflects whether that car is there or not?
Well, it's there for me.
So if I don't experience it, then I could say the car doesn't exist
for you.
For me.
Yeah. Well, it's, again, then you're going into the whole phenomenon of perception. Perception is pretty subjective.
Maybe, and tell me what you think, the way I thought about truth, and maybe I'm not thinking about it correctly, so let me know, is that I think about truth in the sense that that car exists or that car doesn't exist, and whether that car exists or doesn't exist doesn't matter what I think about it, whether I perceive it to exist or doesn't exist. It's just either there or it's not there, and what I think about it doesn't have an impact on that. What do you think?
This is getting very tricky and deep. I believe that there are multiple realities, and this whole concept of parallel universes is very probable. I don't fully understand it. My mind is limited. And I believe that there are certain things in the universe that the mind cannot understand. And I think this reality and parallel universes and things like that are beyond my conception. I mean, I can't explain it to you because I am not fully evolved, and my consciousness is limited by this body and this brain and my experience.
Yeah. In a case where we think that we can't fully explain something, where should we lie? Should our default position be that I'm not going to try to explain that thing? Or should we say, I could go ahead and explain that thing, and that thing that I try to explain is true? I don't know if that was a difficult question.
Well, what I'm hearing is that, the mind tries to understand its experience again.
Yeah.
And if you see a car, and you touch a car, and you sit in a car, your mind is probably going to conclude this is a quote-unquote real thing.
Right.
It's within my perception.
But I think what you're saying is that if I don't perceive that car for whatever reason, then that car, for me, does not exist in the world.
Yeah.
And I think what I was asking is, could that car exist or not exist? I guess what I'm asking is that, or the way I'm thinking about it is, if that car exists, it exists for both of us. And if that car doesn't exist, that it doesn't exist for both of us, that we share a world, we share a reality. And I think you're saying that we don't.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of things, I mean, that people are totally different in their perceptions of, right? And that doesn't mean, like this whole thing about people being really afraid of what's in books and being taught in schools.
Yeah.
I mean, that
This
doesn't
is
make
sometimes
sense to me. It's
and sometimes an interesting differentiation to establish when you're having these kind of conversations in my mind, and I am getting a little better at teasing it apart, is that sometimes when people talk about subjective truths, they talk about them as in how we talk about truth, but sometimes people talk about them and what they might mean is their opinion or their just a perception of something. And so sometimes it's helpful to tease that apart to know what exactly what they mean by a truth.
And I wasn't totally clear on how she was answering your question. When she said absolutely, I wasn't sure if she was agreeing with the first statement you made or the second statement. I don't know if you follow up.
Sometimes I've known to ask convoluted questions, and sometimes, those 3 or 4 part questions, you never know what part they're answering. So I'm trying to slim those down. I wasn't sure either.
Right. Yeah. We don't know.
Yeah. We'll find out.
It's the fear that's affecting people's perception of books. It's not the actual books that are scary. You know?
I'm trying to follow you there. That's my shortcoming, and I'm just trying to see where you're coming from. And I guess what I'm asking is that I'm thinking about like the fact that we share a universe, we share a reality, that if that car exists, that exists for both of us. And I think you're saying that we could share a reality, but that reality we share, that car could exist for one of us and not exist for another.
Well, it's a paradox. I could perceive it and you may not be able to perceive it. Just like, people see things that other people don't see.
How does that reflect whether it exists or not, the car?
Right, good question. Well, it might exist to the person who sees it and not to the person who doesn't see it.
So whether I perceive it or not has an effect of whether it exists or not.
Well, in a way.
Huh.
Or it exists for you. I mean, it exists because I have perceived it and I'm sitting in it and driving it and so on.
If this car could exist for you and not exist for me, and you believe the car exists and I don't believe the car exists, or you believe your belief in reincarnation exists and Tammy believes that reincarnation doesn't exist, wouldn't that mean that all beliefs are true?
All beliefs are true. That I can see how you're going to that, but there's another part of me that says beliefs do not make reality.
Oh, okay. So
beliefs are a process in our brain.
Okay, you're confusing me. I'm confused. You're not confusing me. I'm confusing myself.
Well, maybe I'm confused, and you're just pointing it out.
Yeah, so beliefs don't create reality. So I could believe that there's no car there, but there still could be a car there.
In other words, Tammy could think I'm out of my mind because I believe in reincarnation.
Okay.
But it could still be that she has experienced reincarnation and just doesn't know it yet.
Could she believe the opposite? Could she believe that reincarnation is not a thing and that belief be true?
Well, I see where you're going. This comes down to, again, what is a belief? My belief is, now I'm starting to feel crazy, that whether she knows it or not, she is going to reincarnate as I believe I am, and as I believe my cat is, and you.
And could she have the opposite belief, and that belief possibly be true?
Well, you mean
that reincarnation isn't a thing, doesn't exist, and you might believe it, but she says whether she believes it or not, it's not a thing. That's just what Tammy says.
Right. And so what you're kind of putting me into is a little conundrum here about, because I believe it, and I believe that it's true for me and for her, is her belief true and my belief not true? And I guess that's kind of the problem with beliefs.
Isn't it? I think so.
I think there's some people who have experienced and described reincarnation so well that it made a convincing argument to me.
Yeah.
And the argument
So now
on the
she's
other
falling
side,
back
like
on
people
the
that say, no,
book
you
she read, right? So
Yeah,
it's almost
that's
like
interesting.
she's pushing aside that first personal experience thing and shifting over to a different reason now. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
I kind of see her kind of think about it, her belief in like saying, now why do I, in her head, I'm thinking, she's thinking, now why do I believe this? And we talk about personal experience. Oh yes, and the things that I read, and then right. Yeah, I think you're right about that.
And I don't know how much I put stock into the body language thing. I saw Dali mention the cross arms, and well, I noticed, Mark, because you have your arms sort of crossed sometimes too, and I'm guessing that's not because you're defensive or anything like that. Was it a cold day?
No, I probably didn't realize I was doing it. Now, there's also something in psychology. Yeah, right. If you can not cross your arms, probably best because you don't look defensive, definitely. And I probably didn't realize I was doing it. There's also something in psychology, and I don't know if I was doing this or not, called mirroring, that it increases rapport if you just if the person you're talking to is have their arms crossed and you cross your arms, or you just kind of mirror their body language, and this is just a very simple way to increase rapport kind of rapidly. Just do what they do.
And it feels like you have great rapport right now, but
what's that, Dali?
I have a lot of doubts about body language analysis that I see. I see a lot of bad body language analysis that seems motivated. In this case, I'm just going to say I noticed a change in her body language when she went for actual aporia.
Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't notice that. Okay, so it was a good catch, Diamond.
This is the third time I've watched it, so I may be reading ahead.
No, that's good. That's very good. Yeah, so you're saying kind of it's a way of protecting yourself when you realize when you're having your cognitive dissonance and you're trying to think things through and it's not happening easily. You know, that might be a way to kind of draw back.
Perhaps it may not even be that you're protecting anything, but just there's a shift in your thinking. You know, it's not. I don't know that it's necessarily a defensive thing, but anyways,
yeah. I want to be careful not to put too much weight on it because body language isn't in a dictionary, so we don't really necessarily know what it means in the eye of the author.
Yeah, it's new science.
Get one shot at it. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm using my intuition and my logic and my experience to form my belief, which you're right, I can't prove anything.
Let me ask you this then. Regardless of what you believe, whether reincarnation is a thing that exists or whether it's not a thing that exists, what would you prefer being the truth about reincarnation?
Well, I'd prefer that my essence and the essence of other beings that I'm involved with go on into another form. You know, this is so much deeper than that. It leads right into my belief about karma, and that every action has a reaction and every behavior has a consequence, and that, for example, in my lifetime, this is probably going to be a bad example, but if I am obsessed with money, say, and am very greedy, and do some naughty things to get money, Okay. And my next lifetime might be the opposite, to work out the karma of having created this obsession with money. And I might be either, I don't know how karma works, but I might be really destitute or really wealthy.
I see.
Opposite experiences, like you're making karma, and then you're trying to wear it out on your path to godhood.
Last question. If your belief wasn't true, I'm not saying this is the case, but if it happened not to be true,
yeah,
would you want to know?
Well, would I want to know? Reincarnation is not true. This is all. It's such a trap. That question, it feels like a trap.
Why?
Well, because I've been believing this for probably since my 20s, and I'm 72, so many years, and it's a part of how I operate and how I see the world. It's part of my lens. So no, I don't think I'd want to know that it wasn't true. And it doesn't really matter, because once I'm dead, and I don't think I really have, consciousness after death.
Well, at the very beginning of the conversation, I asked, on a scale from 1, how important is believing in something that is true to you? This belief is true.
Yeah.
I think you said a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
Do you want to revise it lower?
How important it is?
To believe in true things.
Oh, we lost somebody.
Reid must be reconnecting.
I love the redirect to the second question, not the primary question. The meta question of how important becomes the issue now. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, that was it seemed, even by her own acknowledgement, that she really wants it to be true. And so that's, I think, fascinating, because then that's what you want to be true versus what is true, and then there's a tension there. And since she asked that question, I do ask that question at the very beginning, and I forgot if she said a 6 or a 7, that does seem to be a really fair follow-up, because on one hand, the person's telling you that they really, really, really want to believe in true things, but they also want to believe in things that are going to make them comfortable for whatever reason, regardless of whether it's true. And that's, if a person can resolve that in their head, I think not only will this belief, I think, be introspected correctly, but a wide range of beliefs could be, if a person reflects, not necessarily her, but if someone reflects on, well, why do I have this belief? Is it because I really believe it's true, or is it because it's serving some need? I want it to be true, and it makes me feel better, and I can sleep better at night, which is a legit reason to have a belief. But it's sometimes at odds of what is actually true.
It was really interesting hearing her reaction of saying that question felt like a trap. Like,
yeah, I know.
Really surprising, because it seems like if I were in her position, it feels like I would be okay saying that, that no, I don't think I'd want to know, because I just said that yes, this is something I've lived a long time with. This is what I want to be true. But then I guess maybe, like you say, you're running up against that second question that you brought it back to, and that you think she's seen the contradiction, and that's why it feels like a trap.
I think so. I think she's saying, well, if I answer this, I kind of want to have my cake and eat it too.
Right.
And this kind of points that out.
So is there a way you could ask the question to not feel like a trap, or like?
Yeah, no, I really didn't mean it that way. I really didn't mean it that way, because
let it be a trap. It's fine.
Well, it's kind of, that's if you want a rapport buster, it's
that's right.
That's at traps. Yeah, it's interesting she saw it that way, though. Yeah.
What are rapport points but to spend?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe share your goal for asking the question before you ask the question. Maybe.
That's a good one. Yeah, just to say that I'm about to ask this question, and I want to see, where you line up here. And yeah, it's good.
Yeah, Pine Creek Doug would say, I'm going to set a trap for you, and you're going to walk into it, and then I'm going to close the trap, right?
Yeah, he's very clear about what he does.
Yeah.
Do you have an important
17.
It's
That
close to
question
you.
feels like a trap.
Why?
Well, because I've been believing this for probably since my 20s, and I'm 72, so many years, and it's a part of how I operate and how I see the world. It's part of my lens. So no, I don't think I'd want to know that it wasn't true. And it doesn't really matter, because once I'm dead, and I don't think I really have, consciousness after death.
Well, at the very beginning of the conversation, I asked on a scale from 1 to 7, how important is
Yeah,
believing in something that is true
Yeah.
to you? This belief is true.
yeah,
I think you said a 6 or a 7.
yeah.
Do you want to revise it lower?
How important it is?
To believe in true things.
No, because I believe that this is true.
How do you think this conversation went? It's an unusual one, isn't it?
Well, I feel like you probably knew in advance what you were doing, and
This is called street epistemology,
yeah,
and it's just a conversational technique, and it can be used with any belief. You could have a strong belief in reincarnation and talk to someone who has no belief in reincarnation. I mean, anybody can use it, regardless of the belief, and it really gets down to how do you know what you know. That's it. And the
Right.
belief itself really isn't very important, but I really want to know how you go about forming your beliefs, and that's really what it's all about.
epistemology.
Street epistemology.
How'd you get into this?
Great question. It was after the 2016 election, and I was feeling kind of down, and we had two sides of our country having really strong sets of beliefs,
Yeah,
and I was thinking, wow, these strong sets of beliefs are almost opposing, and both can't possibly be true at the same time, and what do we do about this? And that's sort of kind of what set me on this journey.
Well, have you come to any insight or awareness that's changed your perception or your life?
It's a great question. I think the biggest truth I've found is that the more people I talk to, and just tell me how this resonates, is that when it comes to beliefs, I get the sense the more people I talk to, is that instead of us holding strong beliefs about things, when we have these really intense, strong beliefs, they seem to hold us, in the sense that if we hold a strong belief and there's no way that we can tell ourselves or find out that that belief is not true if it happened not to be true, then that belief sort of has us in its grips instead of the other way around.
Well, that's an interesting interpretation.
What do you think?
Well, you're talking about a belief like it's a thing, having it in our grips. I just think the brain is more complicated than that. Part of what the mind does to operate in the world is to try to make sense of things that don't make sense. And making and having beliefs is part of that. And I don't know.
It's hard to talk about. It is. And for whatever reason, beliefs,
I think it's important to have beliefs.
it's very defining for us as humans, it seems, and it's very important. It's very important that we all have them. And
the beliefs that we hold are part of our mental structure for operating in the world and how we're going to respond to things and how we're going to perceive things.
Sure.
So
Sometimes beliefs can almost be an identity.
yeah, and I don't know.
Well, thank you so much for talking. I mean, I think this short conversation actually encapsulates many of these conversations that I have, that they're really tricky to talk about, and we don't really think about them too much, about how we form them and how we think about the purpose of the beliefs, how they run in our lives, like the software we run in our brains kind of thing.
Yeah.
Until we actually take time to talk about it with another person.
Somebody stops you on the street.
Someone stops you on the street and asks you crazy questions.
Podcast on
street epistemology. Yeah, look it up. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That was a really nice conversation. I really liked it.
Okay. Well, thank you. You did make me think. Well, do you have, I mean, when you, in your process of doing all this, has it challenged your beliefs? I mean,
yeah.
Have you become more open or less open? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm more forgiving, I think, when I come across intense beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I am more forgiving to others and less forgiving for myself.
Now, what does a forgiveness have to do with your
Well,
beliefs?
forgiving in the sense of having many of these conversations, I tell myself that I should be more honest with myself and should be more vigilant whenever I maybe happen to be holding an untrue belief. And I should be able to investigate that untrue belief better than others because I'm doing this kind of technique a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But the truth is, I think, is that it's just hard. It's just difficult to do.
Yeah. But then you have to create a whole nother structure, a way of operating in the world.
You have to, it's an excellent point. You have to step kind of outside yourself, which by definition can be very difficult. Yeah.
That's it, guys.
Wow. That was amazing.
That was she was a great IL. She you don't get too many that reflect and really want to, you know you're having a good talk when afterwards you're ending it and they keep going, and so they want to know. And that's someone who reflects, and I would like to think that is someone who, if I saw her again and I talked to her again, that she would have reasoned about it a little bit more, and we would be able to have a part 2 about it.
Mm-hmm.
And she had such great questions for you too, such like deep, open questions. I like that a lot. And your response was interesting too. I mean, I can, that resonated with me as well in terms of when you talked about forgiveness. Maybe I'd describe it as like tolerance towards other people's strong beliefs, but less tolerant for yourself. But you kind of have it's like you have a double standard there, don't you? It's like,
well, I mean, but I don't know, how does that resonate with you guys? I mean, since we all here practice SE, I mean, I would like to think that if I'm holding an untrue belief that I'd be able to root it out more efficiently. I don't know.
I think that's fair.
If you want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if we're more expert in evaluating reasons, then it's like, I'm not going to judge for someone that can't climb a mountain from someone who does it all the time and is an expert at it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's fair.
Yeah. And whoever's watching this, I still have them. I still have untrue beliefs, and that's part of. And I'm not going to tell you. Well, I'm not going to tell you where I fall on this, but it was kind of interesting going on the. I went on the reverse Q&A tour with Reid and Nathan and Peter Boghossian, and it was a wonderful experience and how to SC myself, because where I started on the tour is not where I ended. And my belief, I would say my belief changed quite a bit from not really thinking about it too much, probably, to thinking about it in a strong direction one way, And then by the end, I probably wasn't really strong the other way, but I was probably more of a 5 over instead of a 4, and at a 7. And so I thought that
On
was
what
really
belief?
on the wokeism claims and things like that. Maybe kind of
Okay.
lumped it all together. This
So
thought that was very
Peter's
interesting.
thesis.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was an interesting journey for me, and just because you're immersed in it and you're basically doing nothing but talking about it and experience. You're seeing things on personal experience, but then I started reading about it because it was probably the best thing to do, to start actually reading literature about it. And that's how I like to know my things, how I know. And then, and then talking to Peter and Reid and Nathan about it, and everyone's sort of falls on different areas of the spectrum about it. But it's just, it's just interesting to have that SE experience for myself.
Mhm. Totally.
I have 2 takeaways about your talk with the lady with the reincarnation. I'm not remembering her name.
Nancy.
Thank you. One is I'm reminded how effective your Tammy or Tommy, I think those are your favorite names, using those fictional people examples diffuses the question, because at no point did I hear you push against her belief directly. It was always meta diffusibilities. And the other thing that I really respect is immediately, as soon as she de facto lowered her bar on believing true things, whether she changed the number or not, I detected that she clearly is less about the true things. After that, you did no diffeasibilities, anything. It went meta. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks, Dali. Yeah, when I try to really, if I can, by the end of the conversation, if we're not having a conversation, I really try by the end of the conversation not to have a discussion about the belief. That should, hopefully, if I'm doing it right, by the end of the conversation, we're not even talking about the belief. We're just talking about just epistemology and how we form them and how they happen to form them, because hopefully at that point they realize that it's not really about the belief. If they can, I can.
And they'll reflect on it long after.
Yeah, I hope so. That's why we all do it. That's why we all get into this. We want people to reflect on the quality and the reasons they have, the methods they use, and we want, we don't want. It's just really not about any specific belief. It's really about, gosh, if we could all just think about how we form them and just really reflect on, the manner that we do this, whether it's personal experience or whether it's just gut feelings that we use, and just think about the reliability of those methods that we use. It doesn't really matter about the belief. If we can kind of hone that way we form them, my hope is that we can all be a bit better off.
That's the plan.
And that's why we're talking today, and that's why we're creating a course, SE course it's taking longer to write than we want, but it's making it really good and really polished, and it's so everyone can read and share.
Yep. Module 1 was just finished, external review from the public, and Module 2, why use SE, should be coming up soon. So be sure to sign up for that.
Yep.
Nice.
Module 2 is why use SE, and I know Reid and I were in on writing that, and it's just even writing it was really cool because it helps you think about it in terms of ways you haven't thought about before. There's many reasons why we do SE, and there's 4 people in this room, and I would imagine that us 4 do SE for some similar reasons, but maybe some very vastly different reasons as well, and they're all legit.
Yep. All right, cool. Thanks, Mark.
I do it for peace.
For peace?
Yeah.
Your peace or world peace?
Peace in my conversations.
Peace in your conversations.
My natural tendency is to be a persnickety pedant, and it really helps bring me down to something other people can relate to better.
Oh, so it's helped in your personal conversations. I see.
Yeah. It really, really helps me have a conversation with almost anybody without with maybe 10% as much friction.
Yeah, and it does do that. Diamond, do you wish to share?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely do it to discover things that I'm wrong about. Like, I feel like I reflect a lot on my own beliefs when I have these conversations. So I think I shift like you and Mark a lot, and it does give me a lot of things to go off and look at. I probably have a lot more pebbles in my shoe than my ILs. I don't know.
How about you, Reid?
Yeah, I think I started out wanting to change minds about supernatural stuff, but now I've shifted more to just a personal goal of just wanting to be a better person and model and practice these epistemic and intellectual virtues and moral virtues that are intrinsic in SE. And I want to be that kind of Aristotle applied ethics, virtue ethics type thing. You got to work at it and practice it, and SE is a great way to do it.
It's interesting. I asked, or I had a conversation with Peter Boghossian on our tour about SE, and it was interesting to hear him discuss his thoughts about SE so much time, later. And I don't think I have any problem sharing this. And the way he described street epistemology, people who practice street epistemology, like us in this room, and hopefully you guys out there watching this and who want to practice it, is the way Peter sees it is that we are like us people who practice it are like the cleaner fish that are placed in ponds. That there are certain fish. I didn't really understand what he meant, because I don't really know what he meant in a sense, get a better understanding. I guess there's certain fish that you put in water or ponds that the purpose of the fish is that they clean the water. They filter out the water, as Peter said, so other fish can swim better and be healthier. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And would have been interesting to go down that road more about how he saw that analogy. But I just thought that was fascinating how Peter explained it to me.
Or he's calling us bottom feeders. But
yeah, I didn't know.
We'll be charitable.
I'm okay with that. In my aquariums, my Plecostomus, which is the sucker of the algae, it was always my favorite fish.
Yeah, I think that's how he meant it. I think to clean the tank. So, yeah. But I think, like in 2016, I think, as I mentioned, I think that's what my initial motivation, I think, and not that I'm some lofty person or it's just super idealistic kind of guy, but I mean, I think it's a really good way to reduce suffering for many people. It's a simple way that if we all do it, it would actually reduce suffering as a whole. And I think that's, and it would be so simple if we could all do it more.
Certainly would reduce conflict, I would think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool,
guys.
Thanks for hosting.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, come. Please join us for please watch Cordial Curiosity or Juggling Lessons or Diamond Discourse, and thanks for hanging out with me.
Anytime.
All right. Till next time.